Hey guys, in this video I want to cover the 7 tips that if you follow in your next accounting job interview, you'll be sure to nail down that interview and get the job of your dreams. So stick around, we'll be covering things such as the role, the company, being your professional self, covering why accounting, and planning some stories and asking good questions. I guarantee you, if you understand these tips on a deep level, there is no way you won't nail down that next accounting job interview. If you're new to this channel, my name is Bill Hanna and I'm the financial controller. I put out videos every week to help you grow your career and nail down accounting job interviews. So if you think that this kind of content will help you, hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any of my videos. Okay, so tip number 1 is arriving early. Why do we say arrive early as opposed to arrive on time? The reason why we say to arrive early as opposed to arriving on time is that if you plan to arrive on time, that doesn't factor for events that may delay you, such as train cancellation or any transportation disruption. Your car might break down. Any of these things might delay you. So it's better to plan to arrive early. So if you're arriving like 15 minutes early, that's the right way to go. Arriving on time, that will stress you out, will put you in a situation that you might be arriving late. So tip number 1 is to plan to arrive early. Tip number 2 is understanding the role. So my advice here is that you look at the job description and go bullet by bullet and make sure you understand what every bullet is saying. You need to be sure that you can address each of these bullet points on your job interview. And better yet, you need to be able to draw some connections between these bullet points on the job description and your history, whether your job history or the work you've done in school or anything that might substantiate why you think you can perform these job duties. So tip number 2 is to understand the role. You need to walk into that job interview confident that you know what the job description entails and that you understand how to perform the job. If any of the bullet points on that job description is something that you haven't done in the past, you have now some time to research it online, maybe take an online course, try to understand it a bit more so that you can speak to it during the job interview. So this is my tip number 2, understanding the role. Tip number 3 is to learn about the company itself. The easiest thing for you to do is to Google the name of the company and find any relevant websites or news article that can talk about the company. The second thing you can do there is just to go on the company's website and look at its product page and understand what they're selling, whether it's a product or service, understand how that product or service fits in, either in your daily life or someone you might know, so you can draw some connection between what the company does and between the services and products that you see around you every day. And finally, another great resource when you're researching the company you'll be working for is a website called Crunchbase. Now, not every company is listed on Crunchbase, and if the company is really small and have no history of fundraising, it might not be on there. But take a look and you might find it, and if it's on there, you can find things such as the employee headcount. You can see things such as the history of fundraising, as well as information on the founders of the company and the key employees as well. So, tip number 3, research the company, go on its website, Google its name, find any relevant news article about it, and go on Crunchbase and find some information there as well. Tip number 4 is to be your professional self. Now, we all heard the advice that says you should be yourself during a job interview, and I'm all for that. I think you should 100% be yourself. But my advice is to add a bit of professionalism to being your normal self. Let me give you an example to illustrate this point. If someone asks me why did I choose accounting as a career, well, if I'm sitting in a friendly setting, I might say something like, well, accounting is the language of business, and since, I have a passion for business, then that's why I wanted to study accounting, and that might help me succeed in business. Now, let me give you the version of my answer that I would give during an accounting job interview, which would be the same answer, but I'll add a little bit of polish, a little bit of professional feel to it, so that I may seem like someone that you'd want to work with. The question again was, why did I choose accounting as a career? Well, because I think that accounting is the language of business, and because I have a passion for business and finances, I knew that going into accounting will give me the foundation to succeed in business. Notice the difference. There's a big difference between my body language. I use my hands a little bit less. I kept a constant eye contact. I kept my answer concise and short and to the point. I removed any expressions such as you know and looking around and looking down. And so this is the kind of thing you want to do. You want to be able to be yourself, but you want to be your professional self. So this will be my tip number 4, is being your professional self. Another easy way to be in your professional self, by the way, is to think of someone that you know, that you actually look up to. Think of the way that they speak and try to emulate them during the job interview. Don't try to copy them in every way, but all I'm saying is that be yourself and add a little bit of professionalism to the way you speak. And an easy way to do that is to emulate somebody that you like the way they speak and you think they are professional. Tip number 5 is to be able to cover the question why you chose accounting as a career. A lot of interviewers like this question because it allows you to speak to the reasons why you chose accounting as a career, and it allows you to speak a bit about yourself. Now, there's quite a few ways to answer this question of why I chose accounting as a career. I talked about it a little bit earlier, where I chose accounting because accounting is the language of business, and because I have a passion for business and finances. I chose accounting because it would give me a good foundation to succeed in business. So this is one way to answer it. I want you to think about it, maybe change it a little bit, maybe come up with your own spin. But it's really important before you walk into the job interview is to understand why you chose accounting as a career, because most likely that will come up as a question. Tip number 6, planning stories. The reason why this is super important is because interviewers most often will ask you a question such as, give me an example from your history where you had to resolve a conflict or how you dealt with conflict. They might also ask you a question such as, give me an example of how you remain calm under pressure. And so it's really important before you walk into the job interview is to plan a couple of stories in your head. Now, my advice to you is not to make up any stories. If you make up a story, then it's easy for you to, during the interview, to be caught in a lie. So think of stories that actually happened and things that put you in a positive light, such as studying for an exam and getting a good grade, being calm and having a deadline for submitting a paper or submitting a project, and how you were able to ace it and submit it on time, and if there are obstacles along the way. Maybe there are some reports you needed from other team members that you had to actually go after and get, things of that nature. Everybody has these things in their history. You just need to think hard and deep. You'll find examples of things you've done in the past that will put you in the best light. So plan these stories before the interview, nail them down in your head so that you can talk to them during the interview. Don't rehearse them, don't try to memorize the wording. It's better to have it just a fluid conversation. If you are rehearsed, you will sound robotic, which is not good. So my advice is that you just think through them, remember them, and then have a conversation during the interview about them. So this will be my tip number 6, which is planning stories. Tip number 7 is asking good questions, and this is comes up during the end of the interview. Usually the interviewer will give you some space to ask your own questions about the company, and so it's important that these questions are not an interrogation style questions. Like, don't ask them questions like how many customers do you have, or how much revenue did the company make. This may sound like an interrogation. Try to make your questions sound more strategic, and so this is where my tip number 3 comes into play, which is researching the company. So remember, in tip number 3, we said you'll be researching the company, looking in Google, looking at the company's website, looking at websites like Crunchbase. And so here you can plan some questions. Here are some examples of good questions you can ask during the job interview. Your questions should be more strategic, more thoughtful. So you can ask things like, how does the company plan to grow in the next 5 years? What are the strategic ways that the company is planning to acquire, new users in the future? What are the product enhancements that the company is planning so that it will differentiate itself from the competition? And so you see where I'm going with this. These questions are strategic, they're thoughtful. You're not asking, specific things about like how many customers do you have or how much revenue do you make. You want to make your questions more high level and more strategic and not super specific. So there you go, guys. These are my 7 tips to acing or nailing down your next accounting job interview. In summary, they are arriving early, not arriving on time. Number 2 is understanding the role, making sure you know what the job description is saying. Number 3, researching the company, Google it, go on its website and look at Crunchbase. Number 4 is being your professional self, which means you should be yourself, but add a little bit of professionalism to it. 5 is covering the question of why you chose accounting as a career. Tip number 6 is to plan some stories, and these are stories around remaining calm under pressure, resolving conflict, and think about these stories before the interview. Walk through them in your head and kind of like speak to them during the interview. Number 7 is asking good questions, and like we said, good questions are more strategic and high level and not very specific questions such as like how many customers you have or how much revenue do you have. You want to be asking questions such as where is the company headed, what is the next area of growth, or what is the next exciting product that you have. This is it for this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button. If you know someone who might benefit from the content, if you know someone who's going to a job interview soon, please share this video with them. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on any of the content that I publish weekly, and see you in the next one.